I'm back. All right, so as I mentioned, for anybody who doesn't know me already, I am Shara Carruthers, and I am an Ayurvedic practitioner, lifestyle consultant, and I'm also a wellness mentor for women who feel as though they have lost their mojo along the line and they are looking for an authentic, a holistic, and a natural and individually them way of getting it back. So I work with them to do that. And today, as I said, I am going to be talking about Ayurveda in our relationships. And a lot of, as I've said at the outset, a lot of times people think of when they think about Ayurveda, they think about your diet, they think about your self care, they think about living seasonally, they think about your dosha. They don't necessarily think about the impact that the Ayurvedic way of living, thinking, and approaching things can have on your relationships. And as somebody who is coming up on almost 25 years of marriage, I definitely have some insights about the power of Ayurveda and its way of conceptualizing the world and having us think about ourselves, the impact that that has. And so today I am here just to share 3 things to know about how to how to infuse Ayurveda in your relationships, and then 3 things to do, because I'm really big on action. And so I want to share with you 3 things that you want to do. So let's jump right into the 3 things to know. And I'm guessing that a lot of these things are going to be things that you already know. So some of them are just going to be reminders to you. So the first thing I really want you to know is that relationships challenge our expectations. One of the biggest reasons that we are unhappy in our lives is that we want everything to be something different to what it is, don't we? Right? This goes especially for the people in our lives. So think about the last time that you were frustrated or aggravated with somebody in your home or in your workplace. Was it because their actions didn't match your expectations? Chances are pretty good that it was. And we do that. That's just something that we do. But know, and I think you probably already do, that it really doesn't serve us and it doesn't serve the world. And so the foundation of a happy, healthy, and nourishing relationship is the ability to see people as they are rather than as we want them to be. So that's something I just want to kind of bring your attention to at the outset. Relationships challenge our expectations. Next, what we see and what we experience of anyone is their true nature expressing itself. So we know that our true nature expresses itself in the way that we look, in our physical attributes, and the way that we express ourselves, and our personalities, and the way that we interact with the world around us, right? The things that we choose or how we see other folks. So Ayurveda gives us the opportunity to see our loved ones in the same way that we see a flower or a butterfly or anything that we're experiencing in the natural world. So what do I mean by that? Well, when you see something in the natural world kind of doing its thing or being what it is or who it is, do you really question it? Part of the reason that we don't question it so much is because we know that the nature of a flower is to bloom, or the nature of a dog is to bark. We understand that these things that we experience in the natural world are just the nature of whatever that thing is expressing itself. And so every plant and animal and person actually just is who they are. We're all just big balls of swirling energy expressing themselves in the way that we do. And so from an Ayurvedic standpoint, when I talk about these swirling balls of energy, we want to consider that, and I've talked about the energies within Ayurveda, right? The doshas, Vata and Pitta and Kapha. So balanced Vata is creative and it's enthusiastic and it's talkative and it's sensitive and it's spontaneous, but it can also be, when it's not balanced, it can also be fatigue. It can be anxious, it can be restless and weak and fearful and scattered, right? Balanced Pitta is going to be loving and intelligent and articulate and courageous and focused, but when it's not balanced, it can be perfectionistic and angry and judgmental and impatient and condescending. And balanced Kapha is nurturing and faithful and affectionate and steady and strong, but when it's not balanced, it can be possessive and lethargic and complacent and lazy and prone to things like allergies or congestion, the things that annoy us. And so what we have to understand is that everyone is living somewhere along the spectrum of balance to imbalance. Everyone's living somewhere along that spectrum. And so what we have to do is remember that everyone is fighting a battle that you know nothing about, right? You've heard that quote, be kind, because everyone is fighting a battle that you know nothing about. And so you have to ask yourself, where do you stand along that spectrum, that balance spectrum today, in this moment? Where do the people in your life stand along that spectrum? Okay, and then the last thing, that's number 2. And then the last thing that I want to share with you in terms of things that you need to know is that relationships with others are give and take. So I often talk about this concept of us dancing, right? If you think of there's energies in us and they're expressing themselves, and then there's energies in the world, and we are kind of dancing. We've got this sort of give and take, right, with the things around us. And so when you look at the qualities of our relationships and our communications and our actions, you can start to get a sense for what you're actually dancing with on a daily basis, right? The people, the weather, the situations that you put yourself in or that you find yourself in. And so what's important to understand is that we all get to choose how we experience our lives, right? We get to choose whether we're going to wear a sweater when it's cold or whether we're just going to go outside and take our chances. And so dancing with the cold means wearing appropriate clothing so that I can stay happy and balanced and whatever. And the same goes for everything else in our lives, our food and our actions and our relationships. Dancing with an angry partner might mean taking a cooler stance than you might naturally want to take, just in order to avoid this imbalance of heat, right? Or dancing with an overactive child might mean taking a more grounded stance in order to avoid imbalance yourself, or in order to avoid exacerbating an imbalance that they might be fighting. And so when we know kind of who we're dealing with, so the people around us, when we take some time to actually get to know who they are and what runs their show, we can begin to take a more objective stance, right? We can begin to see them. We can begin to see their true nature. And the way that their energies are expressing themselves. And we can stop taking things so damn personal. We can start to see, is this person hot, or are they light, are they wet, are they dry, are they heavy? All of these wonderful things kind of swirling around them. And when we can begin to watch, and when we can begin to observe the people that we come into contact with without judgment or without criticism, it creates a space for us to truly embrace them, right? We can start to see perhaps even some of their more beautiful and balanced traits, their creativity or their nurturing or their wit or their drive. And we can start to see who they are underneath their current state. And that is really important. So those 3 things, again, just to kind of share those, and then I'll jump onto the action things. They're going to be that relationships challenge our expectations. And any time that you ever experience any frustration around a relationship or somebody that you're in a relationship with, whether that's a friend or family member or a loved or a partner of some kind, understand that frustration is about a challenge of your own expectations. What we see and what we experience of anyone is their true nature, is their nature expressing itself. That's really important too, because we often just think that, someone's doing something just to annoy us. But really it's their nature, in the same way that our nature expresses itself in the things that we choose or the way that we are at any given moment. And then the other thing is that we have to understand is that relationships with others are this beautiful give and take. So let's jump in to talk about what to do. How can you put this information or this wisdom into into action in your relationships in order to make them more fulfilling for you and for the people around you. So the first thing I would suggest, is to discover the doshas of the people around you, right? Start to get an understanding of who they are, when they're balanced, and who they are when they're out of balance. Correspondingly, who you are when you're balanced, and who you are when you're out of balance, and how do your balanced qualities and your imbalanced qualities kind of interact with theirs. So perhaps take it on as something of an investigation of sorts. Try to understand or see these people for, see the qualities of who they are when they're balanced and when they're out of balance. And then, because what you'll probably see is that when they're out of their out of balance qualities trigger your out of balance qualities, and then you can end up kind of having this back and forth. We've all had this experience. But if you can begin to see their out of balance qualities for what they are, an out of balance quality, that might create the space for you to choose who you are going to be, right? That might just create the space for you to choose. And that's a really important thing. The next thing, so the first one, as I said, was discover the dosha. So understand the true nature of the people around you. Next is let go of the past and the future and interact in the present. So how we see people is a function of our nature and our past experiences and our future desires, right? So judgment comes from the past experiences and expectations come from our future desires. And so you have to ask yourself, who is this person in front of you? And what do you know about their current state of balance or imbalance in the present? What can you know about that? And how can you interact with them from a centered place within yourself, without judgment or without expectation? How can you see through their current state to their true nature? So that's all that comes from just being in the present, right? Letting go of any of your past experiences or any of your future desires. And then the last one is to be willing to embrace the dance. So what can we do to choose balance in our relationships? Remember, as I said before, relationships are like a dance, right? They're this give and take. And what that means is that in giving, you're also receiving, particularly if you're giving from a balanced place, right? Particularly if you're giving from a balanced place within yourself. And so if we can start to see our interactions with the people around us as this series of choices that we can either make powerfully, right, in the direction of balance for all, or kind of unhealthily without power, then we can start to experience the sheer joy of the dance of life rather than feeling like we're constantly being like hemmed in or tied down or forced in any way, right? In a straitjacket. And so the question really is to ask yourself, how can you engage in the dance with the people around you, understanding that balance is always going to be a choice. So those are my 3 actions for you. I will repeat them just so that you get clear about what they are. The first one is to discover the doshas of the people around you, understand what makes them tick. Next, let go of the past and the future and just interact in the present. And then the last one is really be willing to embrace this dance. Ask yourself, what can you do to choose balance in your relationships? And so, as I said to you before, I have this wisdom, these points, this information has really informed the choices that I make in my relationships, has really informed the way that I see my children, my husband, my friends, and in just understanding this, just having this understanding has created that space, not in all situations, but in a lot of situations, has created that space for me to choose balance over what would most definitely or almost definitely be imbalance. And so what I hope for you is that it provides the same gift. So if you have any questions, feel free, pop them in the comments. I'm not going to take up any more of your time today. I hope this has been useful to you. Just this maybe a little different look at Ayurveda from the point of view of how it can inform and inspire the way that you interact with the people around you, because as we know, that is one of the most important things to all of us in life, right? That connection. And so until next time, which will be next week, right around the same time, I wish you all well. And thanks for watching. Namaste.